Welcome in, everyone, to the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember to like and subscribe. We have great content for you. And today we have some really good content for you. We've got the one, the only Scotty Bowman, 14 Stanley Cups, 9 as a head coach, 5 others as part of organizations and management. The record 1,244 career regular season wins, 223 playoff wins, and he coached 3 different teams to Stanley Cups: Montreal, Pittsburgh, and Detroit. No other coach has led 3 teams to a Stanley Cup crown. Scotty, thanks so much for taking the time. How are you?
I'm doing well, EJ. I just returned from Florida. We spend 5 months up north in Western New York, and my wife and I, and we go down to Sarasota, Florida, which is a little over an hour and a half from Tampa. We usually go down in the middle of October, and and we come back the middle of May. So we've only been back since last Saturday. I always kid the people. I've been living in Buffalo 47 years, and I said, now I know I budget for 3 months in the summer, June, July, and August. Sometimes September, but it's not as warm as, but it's a nice city. I stayed here. My kids all went to school. Unfortunately, they all left Buffalo to get married and get jobs, but it's a wonderful city. I mean, EJ, they call it the city of friendly neighbors, and that is a very true statement.
Yeah, Buffalo is, I've always enjoyed going there over the years, and obviously huge hockey fans. And of course, you coached and managed there with the Sabres in the 80s. Let me ask you to give your assessment of where the Toronto Maple Leafs are at right now. They've made the change in management. They've moved on from Craig Berube. We're waiting to see who is going to take over as head coach. They have the first overall pick in the draft. To me, the concern is they're older and slower on defense. You watch all these games still, Scotty. Give me your thoughts on the Leafs.
Well, to start off, I mean, certainly with Matthews, Nylander, and Knies, it's not like people look at them and say they have to rebuild completely. And it's a tough call with these teams. Should you move them out and try to get assets? How long? But these are top-notch players. So I mean, it's not like the cupboard is totally bare. I don't know much about the Marlboros, but they're still in the playoffs. They're a farm team from the American League, and that's the feeder for your NHL team. I don't know if there's anybody there that they can really count on, but I mean, they're certainly going to have to make some. It was a tough loss last year when you lose a player like Mitch Marner and you get back something small like a draft. I forget what they got, not much, because he was a free agent. And I guess it was the player that they got, Roy, I think, Roy, and then they had to trade him. They end up getting a later draft pick, but they like when Craig Berube was there 2 years ago. Obviously, they had a decent year, as you know, and getting by Ottawa wasn't that easy. But Stolarz gave them a terrific season in the net after not being a regular with many teams, but he did. And this year he was kind of injured, so I would say the toughest task they'll have, as some other teams do, building the defense core. It's really tough, and they're going to get the number 1 pick. They won that lottery, and that's a tremendous asset to start. I don't know a lot about the players, EJ, but they would. There's 2 or 3 forwards that seem to jump out. The kid from Sweden, and of course McKenna. But then there's a raft of defensemen. But I doubt if they would take. They'll take the best player for sure. But I mean, that's a big asset to get, and I mean they got to retool their team because they got to start with the coaching, and that's another big issue, because they gotta go in and get somebody that's going to be able to do what the manager, and as a new management team completely, but they have a lot of assets. It's not like they don't have a lot of assets. And now, as you know, EJ, cap money is the it's changing now, and most of the teams are going to have money. So it's good and bad when you're trying to rebuild, because I was just thinking the other day about when I started, like with Montreal, and I started in 1956 with the junior team, and what a ride that was, because the Canadians went on, and the big team, which we had nothing to do except try to develop players. But when the Canadians won those 5 cups in a row from 56 to 60, 13 players played all 5 seasons. Now, that doesn't, I don't think it'll ever, I know it won't happen again, but I think now with the changing of with the cap going really up in the next, say, I guess I could go back and say for the next 5 years, you're going to be, it's going to help a lot of teams retain what they have now. I don't know if there's going to be as many open market players that you can go after. We'll know pretty soon in July, but there's probably not going to be the same free agent class, because teams, a lot of the teams have cap space. So it's changing. It's going to be quite a change. So I think Toronto, they have to decide. The biggest problem they have, and you would know it, EJ, because is Tampa, Florida, and then you throw into these teams like Buffalo and Ottawa, even Detroit. They've got players in their system now. And, when you think about it, Boston, look at the year they had. I mean, it's a tough climb in that division, because, you're not going anywhere in the NHL now unless you get out of your own division. I mean, we see that in the the West there with the Colorado and Minnesota, I mean, and Dallas. I mean, that's what they're going to be faced with, is trying to keep up with the rest of the division.
Yeah, no question about it. That will be difficult for the Leafs. Let me ask you about the defense again, just because when you were in Montreal, you had Larry Robinson and Serge Savard and Guy Lapointe. Then you were in Pittsburgh and you had, Coffey and Murphy and some of the other ones there. In Detroit, you had the great Lidstrom. And it's hard to win in any era when you don't have those horses on defense. And the Leafs, Tanev has been a good player in the league, but he's 36, going to be 37. He's very fragile at this stage of things. OEL is older. Riley is getting older. And none of those players are really comparable to that really number one guy that puts everything in his place. So I ask you, as a guy that's had all those great defenders, I just think it's really going to be hard for Toronto, because those guys are just hard to find.
Well, I mean, you pretty well aren't going to find them on the open market. You could look at what Dallas. I mean, when Dallas moved a few years ago, I think it was from number 11 or 13 to 3, and they got Heiskanen. I mean, that was a terrific player to pick up when you already have a pretty good team. And I think it's so hard to get when you look at these Makars and Hughes, they're all in the top 5 all the time. And you can go through the list of players. There's a few sleepers, but there's not very many there's a few that can develop into pretty good players. But I don't think that they would take a chance, because I mean, there are defensemen available in the draft, but I don't think that's the way to go right now for Toronto. I don't know if they will or not, but everybody talks about this kid McKenna, and I don't know how good he is. I just watched it. I mean, quite a year to move from junior. He was a really good junior, moved to Penn State, put up a good second half, with players that are in their early 20s. And he had just turned 18 or 19. So, no, you're right. I mean, the defense is going to be the problem. How do you build it up? And They're they're not the only team that are looking for defense.
That is true. There is no question about that. Hey, we're talking about defensemen, Scotty, and I want to ask you, what did you think of? This is a little off the board, but he's an Ontario native, Matthew Schaeffer, in his first year. He's 18 years old. You've seen them all. What do you think of him?
Well, the biggest surprise was he was injured in his final year at junior. So we didn't see, it wasn't like when Bobby Orr was playing in Oshawa. I mean, I saw Bobby play when he was 13. I saw him play junior at 15. I coached against Oshawa. We had a powerhouse junior team in Montreal. I saw what he did when he was 17, knocked us right out of the playoffs. I mean, but we knew, in fact, I coached the junior Canadians, and Sam Pollock and Lynn Patrick and other people, Milt Schmidt, they were pretty friendly. We brought our junior team to Boston the year before that Orr joined the Bruins. That would be 65 or 60. Yeah, he joined in 66, 1966. But Boston was showcasing them, and we went down with Niagara Falls, Oshawa, and Junior Canadians because they had the two teams. Niagara Falls, Boston was picking up some really good juniors, and they had a pretty good team at West Estevan. But everybody knew Bobby Orr, but the people didn't know Schaeffer. They just knew he was a number one pick. But, so I think he came in, the biggest thing, he came in so unheralded. But when you think back, it's not right because he's a number one pick. But the people didn't think. But what he did this year was amazing for a team that was, I would say, middle of the road team. He wasn't coming into a cellar dweller. He wasn't coming into a powerhouse. But what he did this year was just amazing. I mean, and everything points that he's going to continue to make a mark in this league. I mean, when you see him play, I saw him play one game in person, so it's hard to judge with the TV all the time. But boy, he's to play at the level he did was amazing for me.
Yeah, for a young player, just 18 years of age, barely years of age, to come in and play 24, 25, 26 minutes a night. It was impressive.
So much confidence that you don't teach confidence. You earn it, you have it. And I would say he was so confident in playing that offensive game that he could, yet again, he played a lot of minutes for a young player. I mean, he hardly tailed off in the league, and don't forget he didn't play much the year before. So I mean, I'd say obviously the phrase "the sky's the limit" for sure.
Yeah. What did you think of? Let's go back to the Leafs. What do you think Austin Matthews is at in his career? Again, you had Yzerman, you had the Lafleur, you had Lemieux, you've had all these great players. Where is Matthews? What do you see from him right now at this stage of his career?
Special scoring touch with the way that he can shoot the puck from any position. He's a pure goal scorer. There's no question in my mind. Matthews is a pure goal scorer. Naturally, the team has to get better for him to look even better. That's a tough part because hockey's a team game. There's a goalie and 5 skaters. It's hard for one player because he can be stopped. You can always. I mean, Orr was an exception. There's no question about it. But don't forget, he was on a really powerful team too. That helped Bobby a lot. They had size, they had toughness. They had the when you think about the team they had big, strong centermen. I mean, they were a complete team. So I think EJ that he needs to get going again with Toronto. You got to. There's too much conjecture about whether I don't believe all this stuff that you read. I think, I mean, he was such a great player when he broke in the league. He can get back to that. So I think they've got to be able to put any stories to rest. That's what they have to do, and it's they got to do it pretty soon.
What do you think of William Nylander? He's another guy. He's played pretty well in some big games, and he's a unique player. He's a winger. What do you think of William Nylander?
Skill, so much skill. I mean, like when you can see a guy can shoot the puck like he can. I mean, there's a few in the league. I mean, the kid in Chicago, Bedard. I mean, these guys are going to score goals. But Nylander, yeah, he knows how to play hockey. I'd like to see these young guys get a chance. I think one thing that helped Marner, and I don't know the reason for it. I never asked him, but when he was a rookie, Babcock was coaching. I think Mike Babcock went to Toronto, and all of a sudden, when they got him out of the draft early in the draft, I think it'd be really advisable for you get a young player, teach them how to kill penalties, because a lot of teams they stay away from the young players because the players we get out of junior and college that are real young are usually high-end offensive players. They never had to play without the puck. They never did that, and they get in the NHL, and you want those kind of players. And I think Nylander, like I'd like to see him just. He's so smart. Like people can kill penalties. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's work, and it's also hockey sense, and it's the ability to skate. And I think that's one thing that made Marner a better player is that right from the get go, the first time that he showed up. But now the Leafs are starting to use Matthews to kill penalties. They started. I think Craig Berube did it maybe 1 or 2 years ago, and that's good. That makes you a better player. I mean, the good players like Trottier, Lemaire, guys like that were Ron Francis. I mean, I'm not looking at the like Lemieux and Gretzky, those kind of guys, but I'm looking at the real top centermen that meant so much to their teams, and Fedorov and those guys, and Yzerman. And even when I went to Detroit, like Yzerman was an offensive demon, but he felt he had to score all the time. He never if he didn't score, he didn't think they could win. And all of a sudden, he started to block shots. He started to kill penalties. And I think when he was before I was there, he wasn't killing any penalties. Like they needed goals. But I mean, you can't put it. You can't just ask these players to score 50 and 60 goals. They'd be more valuable if they do everything for you: face-offs, killing penalties, blocking shots, and that's what consummates these good teams. I mean, it was different with Wayne Gretzky because he had Messier with him. I mean, as a 1-2 punch, it was a great system when you think about it. Wayne killed a few penalties, but Messier was an ultimate two-way player. He was like what do they call those five? He was like five. What do they call those? Five tool. Messier was so tough too. Like he didn't fight much. He didn't have to, but Messier was, and they meshed so well together. And I could see it that when you get two centermen on a team, but Nylander, he's a winger. I don't think he's a centerman. I think he's a winger that scores goals. Getting back to him, and I would count on him. I mean, it's not easy to score 40 goals in the NHL, and he's a goal scorer.
How about Matthew Knies? There's one more for you because he's a younger player, and I know you've seen him. He beats up the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Well, he's a guy that the Marchands and these kind of players, he's got that edge about him, but he's a big guy. He's bigger than some of these guys. Buffalo's got a kid that we saw in the playoffs, and that's the comparison they're giving him to Marchand. But Benson, this kid Benson, he's in front of the net all the time. He's fearless. for his size. You just hope he doesn't get hurt. But he's an aggressive guy, and Knies is a big, strong kid, and I don't think he's hit his potential right now. I mean, I think he's. I mean, he came out of a college program. He came out of Arizona actually originally, and he's coming into his own. So that's a player that you can count on to be a two-way player.
Scotty, I'll ask you one more before we let you go. What do you think about coaching today? Because when you coached, you were running the show. I don't know how many assistants you had at different times. I'm sure as your career went longer, I know you had Barry Smith and other guy, Dave Lewis in Detroit. But what do you make of coaching today?
Well, it's a time-consuming job, and you need so much help because you're getting so many analytics. You're getting analytics now. I had analytics because I used to be so inquisitive. I would ask people about. I wanted to know everything about the other players, and I wanted to know. I mean, I didn't get it on a piece of paper or anything, but I mean, the eye test is important to me. Was important, but at the same time, there's a lot of times where I wasn't sure about a decision. So I would analyze and ask somebody that I thought was even maybe had a better idea and a better answer for the question. So I think the staff of a team, it's very important. I mean, the video people, your penalty killing guy, your power play, because it's a departmental job now. You're not doing it all yourself. You're like the supervisor. And the better people you have that can do those jobs, the better off you'll be. And it takes away the players. It's a different flavor for them. I mean, there's some players that can kill penalties that are on the penalty kill. There's other ones on the power play. So there's just not enough time in the day. And it's these coaches don't have an easy job today. I mean, honestly, EJ, they're at the rink. Probably 6 days a week. I don't even know if they're there, and why sometimes 7 o'clock in the morning. They're there before anybody else is there, getting prepared to. It's not just showing up. I mean, I didn't have to do those kind of things. It's a lot different than it is now, and you need a staff. You need people you can count on.
All right, Scotty, I do have one more quick one for you. Did you ever want to or have a chance to coach the Leafs?
I didn't. I had a chance when I knew that when I wasn't going to stay in Montreal. Really, what happened in Montreal is I knew why we were so good, and I put a lot of it on the fact the way that Sam Pollock was a hockey and a businessman, and he knew how to get players. He knew how to work people around. He had good people with him, but and when Sam Pollock retired in '78, I knew how strong he was. He had so much foresight to get draft picks, to trade players. I mean, sure, he had an advantage maybe because he had a lot of players, but when he left, I was concerned about how could we keep the same level of competition. And I made it clear. I said if at the time the two of the top managers in the league were Harry Sinden in Boston and also Emil Francis. They were guys that could build teams, and I said if they and they couldn't hire them, they weren't not going to leave Boston or New York, and I was just concerned. So I that's why I left. But I did interview with Toronto. I did. I mean, Harold Ballard heard that I wanted to leave. I interviewed with Toronto and Washington and Buffalo, and I had a choice. Buffalo seemed to be the better fit for me because it was closer to I could do U.S. and Canada. Toronto, I never really got into. They weren't looking for a manager; they were looking for a coach, and I didn't like what they had as a management team. Punch wasn't there anymore. They were in the throes of just starting over. So I didn't really have much to say about Toronto. Harold Ballard wanted me to go, but he didn't talk contract. And I had a good meeting with Washington, but the team that really wanted me, and I had a young family, and I went to Buffalo because basically I got two jobs to do. I went as a manager coach, and that's the reason I left Montreal. I got a much better contract, but also I was able to. If I said if I'm going to stand on my own feet, then I'll stand on my own feet. But I didn't want to stay in Montreal and have to miss the ability of what I thought built the franchise. Because don't forget, Sam Pollock was with the team since '47, but he never became the general manager. But he ran the team. He ran the getting players, but he wasn't the manager till 1964.
Wow.
He took over the team in '64 when the late Frank Selke retired. But Sam Pollock was ready for that job. I mean, he nearly went to Chicago in the mid '50s when Tommy Ivan left Detroit. He tried hard to get Sam Pollock, but he waited his time, and he was a wizard as far as planning. I can't say enough how smart this guy was. I mean, there's been other people that came along and have done a great job since that time, but he's the reason that I had so much success.
Did you almost become the president of the Leafs?
Well, not a president. They asked me if I wanted to be a senior consultant, which I was interested in, but at the time they were concerned that I was not going to be. I wouldn't give enough time to the job. But they were in the throes of not really. I forget the person that was trying to hire, but I didn't really. It never went very far. I did have a good meeting with Larry Tannenbaum, but at the same time, I had other offers to go. I talked to Jack Diller in New York. That was getting pretty serious with Neil Smith. We were going to go together, but then when Craig Patrick called me, and my kids were still in school, and he said, you want to get back into the game. I got my coach, the late Bob Johnson. You can help us rebuild and do some trades and things. You don't have to move to Pittsburgh. So Craig was the one that gave me the chance to get back in, and of course, misfortune that Bob took a very bad sickness with cancer and passed away. But that kind of revitalized my career. But I wasn't looking to coach again. That's why I went with Pittsburgh, and I didn't have to leave. My kids were still in school, and I didn't have to leave Buffalo.
Well, Scotty, I just want to thank you so much for giving us some time today, because you are an encyclopedia of hockey, and I know you are still watching very closely. So I value your thoughts, and I'm sure the fans value your thoughts on all these Leaf situations. So thanks so much for the time today, Scotty.
Good luck, EJ. We'll be watching from now. We got the real bonus now. We got a game every night for the next 8 or something.
Yeah, that's right. This is a good time of year. We get the big games, the games that you are used to be coaching in all the time. So, Scotty, thanks for the time, my friend.
Thanks. I like to watch NHL Network with you too, EJ.
You're too nice. You're too nice.
You.
Thanks, Scotty. Thanks, Scotty. Well, you've been watching the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember to like and subscribe. We have a lot of great content like we just saw with the great Scotty Bowman. Have a great day, everyone.